Thank you, Roger. Like probably most of you, I view Walmart as a necessary evil. And I say necessary, and we go there because their stores tend to have, like you go to Super Walmart, they've got virtually everything, or at least some of a little bit of everything. And their prices, because it's such a big corporation, their buying power is so huge that their prices, compared to a lot of other places, are more affordable. So we go there, but we go there not for any other reason than they have the stuff and the prices are good, because the experience is pretty crummy generally, right? And typically it starts with a less than lovely experience in the parking lot because it's kind of chaotic. And like this one up here, it's like driving on a lunar landscape, and it feels like you just know I'm going to get a door ding here today somehow, some way. You make your way to the store, you walk in the store, and then there's that's when the real lousy experiences begin. And one of the things that you discover is that many times there are no shopping carts, not one, because they're all pushed into cars out in the parking lot. And so they've got somebody there to greet you, but I'm like, well, will you go out there and get some shopping carts? Anyway, so there's no shopping carts. If, however, you find a shopping cart, what's the condition of that shopping cart? Well, it earned a Purple Heart in World War I, right? And so most of them, the front wheels are bent, or there's hair or gum stuck in it. They're just terrible. Then when you go through the store and you go down the aisles, especially in the grocery section, many times the stocking has been pretty poorly done at best. And many times there's a lot of barren shelves, or the product is there, it's just sitting in pallets in the middle of the aisle. And so you're trying to navigate through that. Anyway, once you finally find the things that you want to purchase, you head up to the front where you begin to serve as a volunteer employee, right? Because now they have shut down almost all of the cashier lines, and so it's mostly self-checkout, and even those lines are getting quite long. But maybe you go to one of the two cashier lanes that's open because I guess you're out of cigarettes, but anyway, you go in that line, and there's, 30, 40, 50,000 people in that line. Anyway, we tend to have a negative experience, and what, in view of that, I find particularly surprising is that from early January through the beginning of April, especially if you go to the staffed checkout lines, you will notice at the end of those lines there are a few little portable set-up offices, cubicles that have been set up for people to get their taxes done. Now, have you ever thought, while you were at Walmart, man, this place is such a well-run machine, staffed by such efficient and competent employees. My experience from the moment I stepped onto this property is so wonderful. I really believe that this is a place that I could get my taxes done and maximize the return. Especially as you look to the lady that's sitting there at that desk, who is alternating between filing her fingernails and surfing Facebook. It's not conveying the image that this is somebody that is particularly astute with the tax code. Probably not going to be able to maximize your return, probably not a CPA that's sitting there at the end of the checkout line at Walmart. And having seen that so many times, I have wondered, why would anyone do that? Why would anyone go to them? I don't get it. Regularly it is in life that we find ourselves making assessments about who it is or what it is that people turn to when they experience some sort of need. Whether it's a physical need and they're looking for a physician or a particular medical facility, whether it is counsel and those that they seek out advice, whether it is an emotional stress that they're going through and those that they reach out to. And you have likely seen someone, as they experience some form of need or distress or problem, they'll go to someone or they'll go to some source, and you'll wonder, why would they go to them? But it's entirely possible, if you're here, though, as someone that's a follower of Christ, that in your time of need, when you're going through your crisis, when you're facing your problem, the one that you are encouraged to go to is the one who made you. To go to the Lord with your problem, to go to God with your difficulty, to go to God as you seek counsel, to go to God as you're pursuing an opportunity. We're going to be thinking about that over the next few weeks as we're looking at some examples of people who go to God in their adversity, in their real time of need, and they're bearing their heart to the Lord, a series that we're calling Honest to God. And we're going to be looking at these prayers of these people, but all of this begs this simple question: why would you go to Him? Why would you, if you're going through your difficulty, you're facing the challenge, your back's against the wall, why go to God versus somebody else? Why take your need to the Lord as opposed to someplace else? It's a pretty important question. We encourage people, hey, go to the Lord, but why? Why? Look with me in your Bibles today to 1 Samuel chapter 1. 1 Samuel chapter 1. We're going to skip the first few verses of that because it has a number of names that I have difficulty pronouncing, and so we'll start at verse 4. 1 Samuel chapter 1, starting with verse 4, we're told that whenever Elkanah offered a sacrifice, he always gave portions of the meat to his wife Peninnah and to each of her sons and daughters. But he gave a double portion to Hannah because he loved her, even though the Lord had kept her from conceiving. Her rival would taunt her severely just to provoke her because the Lord had kept Hannah from conceiving. Year after year, when she went up to the Lord's house, her rival taunted her in this way, and Hannah would weep and not eat. "Hannah, why are you crying?" her husband Elkanah would ask. "Why won't you eat? Why are you troubled? Am I not better to you than 10 sons?" On one occasion, Hannah got up after they ate and drank at Shiloh. The priest Eli was sitting on a chair by the doorpost of the Lord's temple, and deeply hurt, Hannah prayed to the Lord and wept with many tears. Making a vow, she pleaded, "Lord of armies, if you'll take notice of your servant's affliction, remember and not forget me, and give your servant a son, I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life, and his hair will never be cut." While she continued praying in the Lord's presence, Eli watched her mouth. Hannah was praying silently, and though her lips were moving, her voice could not be heard. Eli thought she was drunk and said to her, "How long are you going to be drunk? Get rid of your wine." "No, my lord," Hannah replied. "I am a woman with a broken heart. I haven't had any wine or beer. I've been pouring out my heart before the Lord. Don't think of me as a wicked woman. I've been praying from the depth of my anguish and my resentment." Eli responded, "Go in peace, and may the God of Israel grant the request you've made of him." "May your servant find favor with you," she replied. Then Hannah went on her way. She ate and no longer looked despondent. Here is an example of someone, in this case Hannah, this woman who is absolutely being honest to and honest with God, and she is bearing her heart to the Lord. And as we see her doing that, it helps answer the question why I should, why you should, why anybody, as you encounter or experience your difficulty, your problem, your adversity, your obstacle, whatever it is, why go to the Lord with your problem? Well, based on what we see here, the first reason I believe is this: there is a limit to the understanding of others. There is a limit to the understanding of others. Now, to set the stage for you, this is where, in fact, Hannah is going to have a child later. We know him to be Samuel, if you are familiar or unfamiliar with the story. But as this book begins, we're introduced to a man whose name is Elkanah, and his wife is Hannah. She is unable to conceive, doesn't have children, and that seems to be the reason why it is that he has taken a second wife, a woman whose name is Peninnah. And Peninnah is not barren, and she is able to have sons and daughters. How many, we don't know. But it would have been particularly important in this agrarian culture that there would be not simply heirs, but there would also be family to help do the work, to help plow the fields, to bring in the harvest. And you can just imagine that this is not a recipe for delight in marital experience. And so you've got Elkanah, who has got these two wives, these two women in his household, and Hannah wants to be not just a wife, she wants to be a mom, desperately wants to be a mom. But year after year passes, and she's unable to conceive. But then Peninnah, she's a fertile myrtle. And so there are all these, she's an Owens is what it seems. And so there's all these kids that are showing up. And as oh, she's pregnant again. Oh, she's pregnant again. Each time, this is like a knife in Hannah's heart. Now, we're told about this particular prayer, but it seems pretty clear that this is probably not the only instance. We've got to think probably that she had regularly been talking to God about her difficulty, and it was becoming a menacing, vexing problem for her emotionally. There was the personal disappointment that she experienced, the hopes and dreams that she had of being a mom, of having a son, of having a daughter that seemed that they were going to go unfulfilled. So there's the personal disappointment. But then it's made all the worse because Peninnah is just kind of sticking it to her. Oh, so would you mind holding my baby for a moment? Oh. Have you gained a few pounds? Never mind, I'm sorry, you're not pregnant. You just gained weight. We can't imagine all the ways in which she was insulting and antagonizing and goading Hannah, and this is accumulating so that she is not just in her own mind devastated by the dashed hopes and dreams, but emotionally she keeps being injured by this woman that she's having to share a home with, thinking, man, she has no place in here. If only I'd been able to have a child, then she wouldn't be here in the first place, and I wouldn't be going through all of this misery. And so we're told that as part of the custom, though, they would be going on an annual basis to offer sacrifices to the Lord. And as that would happen, there would be meat that was left over from the sacrifices that would be divvied up among the household that is worshiping. And Elkanah, we're told he loved Hannah. In fact, it seems that she was clearly the favorite. And he would give her a double portion of meat. And then he would say to her, why are you troubled? I mean, this is a textbook example of what standard husband fare looks like. And guys, let's just admit it, we are dumb. We are dumb, and Elkanah was dumb. We come from a long lineage of those who were dumb. And he says, why are you troubled? Well, he should know what the problem is. This has been going on for a while. It's getting increasingly difficult. And then he says this is one of my favorite passages in the Bible. He says to her, am I not better to you than 10 sons? It's like me describing Caroline having won the lottery. You are so you've got me. You've got me. What more could you want? Well, there was a lot more that she wanted. But Elkanah doesn't seem to get it. Why are you still troubled? Why are you so vexed? Why are you so despondent? And here she is, we're told in verse 9, this one occasion, she has been insulted again by Peninnah. She has watched as this food gets divvied up, and the sons and daughters of Peninnah, they're able to get all of this, and she's got no son, no daughter herself, and she pleads with the Lord. She weeps, we're told, with many tears, and she prays to Him, but she's praying silently, but her mouth is moving. Now, Eli is the priest. He's the spiritual leader. And what does he think? She's drunk. Her mouth is moving, nothing is coming out, she's crying. Clearly, she needs to back away from the bottle. So he says to her, how long are you going to be drinking? Let's put the bottle down. And she says, listen, I am not drunk. What is going on is that I am bearing my heart to the Lord, and these are the tears of bitterness and despondency and discouragement and sadness and grief and all of that. Don't think of me as a wicked woman. I've been praying, she says in verse 16, from the depth of my anguish and resentment. What I want you to get is this. Elkanah is her husband. That is the primary relationship that exists this side of heaven. I mean, as much as I love my children and as close as I am to them, the primary relationship that I have this side of heaven is with my wife. And I know her better than I know anyone else. And she knows me better than anyone else. Likely the same was true for Hannah and Elkanah in terms of their relationship. And as she is going through this, as she is dealing with this broken heart, as she's regularly dealing with this despondency, what does her husband say to her? The guy that supposedly knows her than anybody else. What's the problem? Is anything going? I mean, like, you've got me, so, I mean, like, you've got to think that as he said that, Hannah was thinking, you just don't get it. Then it seems to get worse because as she goes to offer, as the faithful of God would do at this point to go render sacrifices to the Lord. You've got the priest, you've got the spiritual leader, you've got Eli. This is somebody that is the go-between at this point between individuals and the one who made us. This is somebody who should have been astute. This is somebody who should have been on the right wavelength. And what does he think? She's drunk. So the priest thinks I'm a wino, and my husband thinks that I'm a lottery winner. They don't get it. They don't get it. Do you know why? Because simply stated, there is a limit to the understanding of people. When I first started pastoring, I had, at that point, began with far greater frequency. I'd been to the hospital and I had been to see people before, but not until I started pastoring did I have to do so on a regular basis. And that experience began to open my eyes to something that at 26 years old I had not yet experienced. And that was that anytime I had been to the doctor or anytime I had been to the hospital at that point in my life, it was because of some issue that I had. Had I broken a finger? Well, let's do an x-ray. The finger's broken. Let's splint it and send you on your way. You've got a cut on your face. You need some stitches. That's the problem. Let's stitch you up and send you on your way. You go to the doctor. My throat is hurting and I've got a fever. Let's do a strep test. You've got strep. Let's give you an antibiotic and send you on your way. There was problem. There was solution. And generally speaking, in the earliest years of life, that's how it works. You have problem, easy identified, solution. And then as I began to go see people in the hospital, there's a phrase that begins to run through my mind that I've heard people say before, but I'm finally understanding, and it's this: the practice of medicine. And the older that we get, our bodies begin to have increasing amounts of difficulties and problems, and it's not always clear exactly what the problem is or what the solution is. And sometimes trying to treat one difficulty creates another problem. And trying to help your heart, we hurt your kidneys. And trying to help your liver, we hurt your stomach. Whatever. I mean, there's all of these difficulties, and there's a lot of of what is candidly guesswork that is going on in the minds of these physicians. And let's face it, doctors, we think of them to be particularly smart and bright. They've gone to school for a really long time, and our culture and society, they're among the most well-educated and erudite and well-trained and keen minds that are among us. And so many times what they are doing is doing little more than making an educated guess. Why? Because there's a limit to how much we can know. There just is. There's some stuff that we can figure out very easily, but there's a lot that we just, I just don't know. This is what I think. This is what I anticipate. This is what I'm guessing, but I just don't know. And that's not just true as it relates to our bodies. It's also true as it relates to what's going on inside of us emotionally. Caroline, it's been some time, though. I think she knows better than to ask me this question again, though. And ladies, I don't know if you've ever asked your husband or a boyfriend a question like this, but the question was, you ever feel like you just want to cry? No. I mean, that's like saying, do you ever just wake up and you'd like to have a good, root canal? I hear the storm brewing. Maybe we're getting ready to get more new equipment. Anyway, but her saying that to me, I'm like, finding pleasure in and finding release and finding stress relief in the experience, I do not get that. But I am to her, and she is to me the dearest on earth. And you know what? I don't completely get her. There are things about me she does not completely get about me. The smartest doctors, there are things that they don't get about you. Do you know why? Because very simply stated, there is a limit to the understanding of others. And so many times, even as followers of Christ, we find ourselves experiencing inordinate frustration because we keep going to this person, we go to this counselor, we read this book, we listen to this podcast. We're doing all of these things because we've got this difficulty and we're looking for answers, and we're looking for somebody to get us. And when somebody doesn't, we try somebody else. And I'm just telling you that at the end of the day, if that's what you're doing, you're chasing the wind. and you're never going to find satisfaction because, very simply stated, there is a limit to the understanding of others. Hannah's husband didn't get it. The priest didn't get it. Nobody got it. And so what does she do? She goes to the Lord because He understood her. Simply stated, the one who made you knows you. God gets you. Not only does He know about you and all that has happened, He knows what's around the corner, and He also even knows the motivations behind what it is that you have done. All of this stuff He knows. There are no surprises to Him. Why is it that we should ever go to Him? Because every other path that we go down ultimately is a dead end. Because there's a limit to the understanding of others. But not only that, there is a limit to the abilities of others. There's a limit to the abilities of others. Even though he failed, you've got to give Elkanah at least some credit for trying. I mean, he sees that Hannah is despondent and that she is grieving. And he tries to say, hey, look at your marriage license. That should put a smile on your face. And that doesn't either. But we're told that he does something else. As they would go to offer sacrifice, meat would be left over that would be able to be consumed by the household of those that is rendering this sacrifice. And it would be divvied out proportionally. And so it should be the case that Peninnah and her sons and daughters would get a lot more. But we're told that actually Elkanah would give Hannah a double portion. He would give to her a double portion. Now, why in the world would he do something like that? I mean, here she is that she's got a broken heart and she's devastated, she's frustrated, she is disappointed, she's all of these things. And so he's saying, here, have some more roast beef. How I would answer that is this. In every culture, and it's always been this way, there are traditions in particular as it relates to death. And for example, when someone dies in various cultures around the world historically and even to modern days, there are things that we will do, for example, with the body. And so in the United States, generally it's going to be either cremation or we'll embalm a body and then dress it up and put it under lights and put it on display. Why do we do that? Well, that's just kind of what we do. And even in different parts of the country, there are, like for example, a casket up north, they're typically going to have from head to foot open, not so in the South. Every culture has these traditions with respect to death and how we respond and what we do with the body and how we do all of that. Anyway, not only is that true, there are also traditions as it relates to how those around the grieving respond. And I don't know about other places in the world, but certainly it is in the United States, in particular in the South. If somebody dies, what do? We fire up the stove, right? And so we go to someone, I am so sorry that you lost your husband. Here's a broccoli casserole. I'm so sorry about your mother's death. Let me give to you a coconut cake. Let me ask you, when you have lost, because likely most of you in this room, nearly all of us have lost someone that is dear to us, but some have lost some particularly close to you. When you were going through those times, what's something that you really didn't want to do? You didn't really feel like eating. I mean, your heart was broken. Your emotions were just shredded. You are so sad. You were so despondent. And the last thing that you want to do is eat, and then everyone shows up to hug your neck, and they're handing you another casserole. I'm so sorry about your loss. Here, have some dumplings. Right? Why do we do that? I'll answer this way. Because we can't do anything else. We want to do something. But we realize there's really nothing that I can say that makes your heart feel better. There's nothing in terms of actions that I can do that's going to mitigate this loss. I want to do something, and so the best that I can do is here. Have a pie. Why do we do that? Because we can't do anything else. I'm just telling you, very simply, that's reflective of what we just see, that there is a limit to the ability of others. This one who knew Hannah, who was dearest on earth to her, not only did he not get really her problem, he couldn't solve her problem. The priest didn't get it. He didn't understand it, and he couldn't fix it. And so she goes to the Lord, and as she is pleading with the Lord, you see something in verse 17. He says, "Go in peace, and may the God of Israel grant the request you've made of him." Here's what we don't know. Is Eli saying, "Oh, you're going to have a child now"? Because the language is not particularly clear. May the God of Israel grant the request you made of him. I mean, that could be saying it's going to happen, or it could just as easily be, I hope God grants to you what it is that you've asked of him. But one thing that he says here about which there is no uncertainty, and that's this. He tells her, "Go in peace." In truth, if there was anything that Hannah was lacking, it's peace, wasn't it? All this turmoil that she was experiencing relationally because of Peninnah, all the disappointment she was experiencing personally because of dashed hopes and dreams, all the difficulty she was experiencing as she watched day in and day out the sons and daughters of this resentful, nasty woman in her own home. The frustration she was experiencing with a husband who didn't get it and couldn't solve these problems. And this is increasing. And this has been going on for years. Years this has been going on. And now she's told she can do what? She can experience peace. In fact, we're told at the end of verse 18, Hannah went on her way, she ate, and no longer looked despondent. Why is that? Is it because of what Eli gave to her? Is it because of what Eli pronounced to her? Is it because of a double portion of meat that she received from her husband? No, let me answer it this way. Isaiah 26:3 says this, "You will keep the mind that is dependent on you in perfect peace because it is trusting in you." At the end of the day, as you are experiencing your problem and your difficulty, probably the greatest symptom that you would describe that it produces is this feeling of turmoil, these feelings of tumult, of chaos, of uncertainty, of fear, of anxiety, of apprehension. And I'm telling you, there's no one around you that's going to fully get you and fully understand. And beyond that, there's a limit to what other people can do to help you. The best, many times, they can do in your darkest day is to say, here's a casserole. But God says that He will grant to those who are dependent on Him peace. Peace. Why should I go anywhere else? Ultimately, every other route is a dead end because there's a limit to the understanding of others. There's a limit to the abilities of others. Maybe that is what I should be doing, is just simply being honest to God. Will you bow your heads with me?